It's another edition of Foreign Dispatches on Channels Television. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. I'm Anne Nwawadu. This week, we take a look at gender-based violence and the new wave of the coronavirus outbreak in parts of the world. Once again, welcome to Foreign Dispatches. Like Nigeria, South Africa is currently gripped with harrowing stories of gender-based violence. This has sparked a series of protests, and President Cyril Ramaphosa has led in condemning the trend. He has appealed to community members to help government's efforts to keep women and children in the country safer. A South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia has the rest of the story.
It is with the heaviest of hearts that I stand before the women and the girls of South Africa this evening to talk about another pandemic that is raging in our country. The killing of women and children by the men of our country. Over the past few weeks, no fewer than 21 women and children have been murdered. Their killers thought they could silence them. But we will not forget them, and we will speak for them where they themselves cannot.
These are the faces behind the often ruled out statistics so far this year alone in South Africa. Community members look to government, which looks to the community members for help. Meanwhile, the body count keeps rising. The police says it's doing a lot of intervention on several fronts, but hopes community members will support efforts, especially on the issue of sharing vital information.
We interact with the community, and as and when there is a case of a gender-based violence, we are in a position to can assist the victims. But what is critically important is that together we can do more. In other words, we need that we have to have the active participation of our community.
Every case triggers an uproar, protests, speeches, and sometimes convictions that grab the headlines, and then silence. A most harrowing case currently in the preliminary prosecution stage is that of 28-year-old Tshegofatso Phule. 28-year-old Tshegofatso Phule was stabbed to death and hung up a tree to die, along with her 8-month-old unborn baby, on the 5th of June this year. 31-year-old Mzikaise Malepane appeared before the magistrate John Baloyi for a second time in connection with this time via camera. The restless crowd in court sometimes angered the magistrate.
There's so much commotion, please keep quiet.
The session wasn't long and was soon adjourned for the accused to get legal representation.
I called for you to obtain services of a private attorney. You are in custody, no bail. You won't be brought here. We will be seeing you via AVR camera. Thank you.
While the victims' family members were quite emotional about this delay, outside the court, a large crowd bayed for blood and justice.
We want justice for Tshegofatso and her baby, but the way in which the judge acted, I really feel that he shouldn't have acted in that manner. I mean, last week Muzi did say he can't afford a lawyer. All of a sudden, he can afford a lawyer, and no questions were ever asked as to why he's all of a sudden being able to afford a lawyer.
Every accused person has a right to be represented by a legal representative of their choice. As much as the family wants justice, I feel the public, but we also need to let certain things to unfold. We need to let the court function in the manner that they should. We need to also allow him to obtain his legal representative of his choice. If he chooses that he doesn't want to be represented by the legal aid and he needs a private attorney, we should also allow him. It is his right. I am not of the view that it is a delaying tactic.
Tsegofatso's uncle, Tumisanga Take, ironically defended the man who killed and dumped the body of 23-year-old Karabo Mokoena, his girlfriend. Sandile Mantwe got 32 years in jail in 2018. Tumisanga Take says he now feels the pain Karabo's family felt and hopes his niece, Tsegofatso, and her unborn baby will get justice as the family awaits answers as to why the murder was committed in the first place. The case has been adjourned to the 2nd of July when hopefully people will begin to hear and understand the reason behind the killing of Tsegofatso Pule and her unborn baby. Sadly, since her body was discovered hanging off a tree about 3 weeks ago in this area, no fewer than 6 girls, women and children have been discovered in several parts of South Africa. From the Roodepoort Magistrates Court, Johannesburg, Betty Dibia for Foreign Dispatches.
Even outside the African continent, the issue of gender-based violence remains the same. Let's head to Argentina now, where female protesters lent their voices in condemning the act of violence against women in the country, with a movement called Not One Woman Less. Take a look.
Argentines gathered in Buenos Aires this week to protest against the gender violence in the South American country. Gender violence is a problem that is not solved. In the year, there have been 120 femicides, 50 during the quarantine. That is more or less one woman killed every 28 hours. There were 25 murders of transgender people, and the state still does not give a budget to solve it. A dozen women gathered outside Metropolitan Cathedral to mark the 5th anniversary of the movement called Ni Una Menos, which means not one woman less. Women asked to end the growing issue of gender-based violence and femicides in Argentina and demanded that the government allocate funds to struggle against gender violence. During the quarantine, there were 50 femicides, an increase of almost a third compared to the same period in 2018, said La Casa del Centro, an Argentine human rights group.
It's no longer news that the coronavirus pandemic is not slowing down in many parts of the world. In fact, a new wave has now been seen in many countries. Let's begin with the United States of America, where the President Donald Trump is planning a second round of aid for Americans to support those affected by the shutdown and help households recover.
You said that you told your staff.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he supports the idea of giving Americans a second round of financial aid to mitigate the effect of shutdowns to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus. At a political rally in Oklahoma on Saturday, Mr. Trump said that he had directed his people to slow down testing for the virus because the process had led to an increased number of known COVID-19 cases. When asked by Scripps Networks if he had asked for testing to be slowed down, the president pointed to the number of tests the country has undertaken.
We do more testing than any country in the world by far, 25 million tests. Other countries do 1 million. Every time you do a test, as you do more tests, it shows more and more cases. So we're so far advanced, both in terms of the quality and the amount, and we're doing all these tests and it shows cases. If other countries aren't doing, or if we did slow it down, we wouldn't show nearly as many cases. You're showing people that are asymptomatic, you're showing people that have very little problem, you're showing young people that don't have a problem. But we're doing so much testing, 25 million tests. Nobody thought that was possible.
But did you ask to slow it down?
If it did slow down, frankly, I think we're way ahead of ourselves, if you want to know the truth. We've done too good a job, because every time we go out with 25 million tests, you're going to find more people. So then they say, oh, we have more cases in the United States. The reason we have more cases, because we do more testing than any other country by far.
Asked if he backed another payment to individual Americans, Mr. Trump told Scripps Networks that he supported the idea of sending out a second check.
We will be doing another stimulus package. It'll be very good. It'll be very generous. And
how much? How much? How much? People want to know.
You'll find out about it. You'll find out.
When are you going to do it? When are you going to announce it?
I think over the next, I think it's going to be bipartisan. I think it's going to be over the next couple of weeks, probably. No, I don't think so. We're just, I'm making a speech tomorrow for a group. That's a very, very good group, young people. And I don't know how they have it set up, but I'm going to Arizona. It's a great place, great state.
Republicans and Democrats in Congress agreed to provide direct payments of up to $1,200 each to millions of Americans, with additional payments of $500 per child in legislation that Trump signed into law in March. Another $3 trillion bill that passed the House of Representatives on May 15 contains a second round of economic stimulus payments of up to $6,000 per U.S. household. But the Republican-controlled Senate has not taken up the House package, and lawmakers are not expected to move towards another coronavirus bill until sometime in July.
Meanwhile, residents in Florida are panicking over the recent surge in positive cases of COVID-19. But the government says they must remain calm, as this only shows more testing is being done in Florida. This and other related stories in Texas coming up next.
The southeastern U.S. state of Florida reported more cases on Saturday, 4,049, setting a single-day record for the third day in a row after more businesses resumed operations.
It's dangerous, and I think it's increasing, and it'll get worse.
The United States has over 2.27 million cases in total and about 120,000 deaths. The state of Florida announced new record numbers of COVID-19 cases on Friday and Saturday after allowing bars, restaurants and some theme parks to reopen.
I think it's concerning, but I don't think we're getting all the facts. I think we need to know how much they've increased the testing and if that's in proportion to how many more people are showing up positive.
In addition, the hospitalizations continue their steady rise in many parts of the state, especially in Miami-Dade County. However, people in this Sunshine State are not social distancing. Local politicians insist that Floridians should not panic. They attribute the spike to increased testing and say that the median age of these new cases is 37 years old and mostly asymptomatic.
I think I agree with the governor that it's a lot to do with the testing, but I also think it's probably because a lot of the young people are tired of staying inside and everybody wants to get out and live their lives. As do I. I want to get out and live my life too.
The caveat is that these younger people do interact with older and more vulnerable populations. As of now, wearing masks has not become a mandate in Florida, though it could change if the alarming trend in new infections and hospitalization continues. Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday, June 22, said the rising rate of COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations was unacceptable, but said he has no plans to shut down the state again.
COVID-19 is now spreading at an unacceptable rate in Texas, and it must be corralled. We have several strategies to reduce the spread without having to shut Texas back down. First, we need to have all Texans follow the safe protocols that we've all come to learn. Stay at home if you can, sanitize your hands, try to stay 6 feet away from others that you're not traveling with, and if you cannot stay a safe distance, wear a face mask or a face covering. I've said all along that if the positivity rate or the hospitalization rate increase too much, we have strategies to reduce the spread of COVID-19 without having to return to stay-at-home policies. Closing down Texas again will always be the last option. COVID-19 remains a very fast-spreading virus that will remain in Texas, the United States, and across the entire world until treatments are available to mitigate it. As a result, we must find ways to return to our daily routines while also learning ways to coexist with COVID-19.
Texas broke its record for COVID-19 hospitalizations for the 11th day in a row, with state health officials reporting 3,711 patients in Texas hospitals Monday, according to the state's Man News Network.
You're still watching Foreign Dispatches on Channels Television. To some cherry stories now. Cinema lovers are super excited to be doing what they love. That is watching movies in a bigger space with more people and not just in their homes. The lockdown had prevented them from enjoying this for about 3 months now. Check this out.
After a 3-month coronavirus hiatus, French movie fans made a comeback on Monday, June the 22nd. As cinemas across the country reopened in the latest phase of the country's relaxation of lockdown measures.
I missed it a lot, especially since tomorrow I am leaving on holiday for 3 months. I really wanted to enjoy it before I left. Watch the movies that I didn't have time to watch. I really missed it. I used to go to the cinema 3 or 4 times a week, and I missed it so much. And it also marks a return to normal life.
France, widely considered the birthplace of cinema, has more screens per capita than any other country in Europe, but they have been black since mid-March in response to the COVID-19 crisis.
The French people are the biggest cinephiles in the world. It's the country where there are the most cinema, the most spectators, where the biggest number of movies are released. And you can see in surveys, or even just what happens this morning, with how many people there were for the reopening, that they love cinema and that they missed it. We observed that people are really impatient, so we are really confident about this reopening. As for spending 2 hours in a cinema, it's much less risky spending 2 hours in a cinema than traveling on a public bus or taking a train.
The pandemic has killed more than 29,000 people in France. But with transmission rates slowed and hospital admissions falling, President Emmanuel Macron announced an accelerated end of lockdown on June the 14th, including the reopening of cinemas. A small crowd gathered in front of the MK2 Bibliothèque Multiplex Cinema in Paris shortly before it opened on Monday. Many of them committed moviegoers who said they had had enough of watching films on streaming platforms at home. The early showings included various French movies. The director of the MK2 chain said there will be no problems with supply after the coronavirus lockdown, with completed movies waiting in the wings to be released later than originally planned.
Nothing will change in the future. People will not see any difference. It's not the same as the scriptwriters' strike a few years ago, where 18 months later, almost no Hollywood movies were released for 3 months. Here, movies are only postponed and there is no problem of supply of movies in the coming months. Everything returns to how it was.
I watch Netflix every day on a small screen. There are a lot of interesting things. It's great, but I enjoy the atmosphere of a cinema because firstly it's bigger, plus you're all together. You're not alone. At home, you're sometimes alone watching movies, and it's great, but I like the atmosphere in a cinema.
Addressing concerns about safety, he said the risk of catching coronavirus was limited and lower than for other permitted activities, including train transport.
It's a breath of fresh air for music lovers in Italy also, as blues musicians perform to the admiration of their audience on the shores of the largest lake in Italy. It was organized to allow people attend without the risk of staying too close to each other.
Blues musicians in an Italian lakeside town came up with a novel way to please fans despite coronavirus restrictions. Play from borrowed fishing boats to an audience on shore. They loaded guitars, harmonicas, microphones and battery-powered amplifiers on 4 small boats with output motors, stopping here and there along the shoreline of the largest lake in central Italy to belt out a tune or two.
oggi abbiamo fatto qualcosa di bello.
Today we have done something nice in Catiliano del Lago. We have used fishermen's boat and music, the blues. Let's say the truth, we felt like we were on Mississippi Delta. People really respected the social distancing rule. There were no gatherings. There were lots of respect for what has really been an emergency. We will get through it with a lot of caution and awareness.
Organizers of the annual Transameno Blues Festival came up with the idea to allow people to attend without the risk of being too close to each other, with the musicians far away on the fishing boats. Call it extreme social distancing. Some music lovers came up with a nifty trick to get closer to the music by using a paddle board to get a closer but still safe view.
This is a nice new thing. I think it's a new start for the musicians and people who work in the sector. We are really glad because keeping this type of distance, they can do other performances. They can feel alive and ready to start again with the public.
The rest of the mask-wearing concert-goers enjoyed the 12-bar blues from dry land. Concerts were allowed to start again in Italy from June the 15th as part of the country's staged end to lockdown. Strict social distancing rules are in force, but bobbing along a calm lake with a backdrop of stunning mountains was a joyous way to perform within the guidelines for musicians.
It was absolutely beautiful, a fantastic show. We needed this after being cooped up at home for so long, and we feared there would be no more concert. This is a real innovation, something to do in the future. Performances on the lake like this, we can stay far away, but close together.
The performances were just a taste of what will be on offer when the festival is held on a reduced scale in August. Tourists were delighted, one saying this is needed after being cooped up at home for so long with fears that there will be no more concerts.
A zoo in France witnessed something spectacular this week. For the first time since June the 7th, a baby hippo took its first step in a deep pool. Baby Gloria, as the hippo is called, is the only baby hippo in France. Check this out.
Gloria, the baby hippo, took her first tentative steps into the deep pool in her enclosure at France's Beauval Zoo this week. Born on June the 7th, the baby had already swum in a smaller interior tank where her mother, Bolinhas, helped her rise to the surface to breathe. But Monday's outing was the first in the main enclosure with its 2-meter deep pool, which is to be her new home.
The birth of an animal is always an event, particularly when it is such an iconic species as the hippopotamus, our new arrival 3 years ago. This incredible tank and seeing this baby, who only weighs 35 kilograms, come out with her mom in this tank, having the chance to enjoy this moment. It's incredible.
Gloria, named after the hippo in the DreamWorks movie Madagascar, weighed 38 kilograms when she was born after an 8-month pregnancy. Her mother's first, and became the only baby hippopotamus in France, according to the zoo.
This birth has been a success, above all because her mom looks after her perfectly. It's her first baby, so it could have gone less well, as in the natural world when mothers don't necessarily have the instinct and sometimes can allow their first baby to die. That can happen, but she fed her in the first hours. She was born in the middle of the day, which is rare. Normally, hippopotamuses are born at night. It went really well. The mother didn't hesitate and the little ones were reassured too. They both got in the water straight away. They didn't hang about. It was really great and it didn't take long. Even though the tank is 1 meter deeper than the one inside, the little one gets by really well. Her mom looks after her well, so it's the final hurdle.
For the moment, she has been kept away from her father, Guido, and has spent the first 2 weeks inside.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Foreign Dispatches. Don't forget to keep up with all our top stories. Do it on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching this week. I'm Anne Nwawadu, and don't forget, please stay safe. See you again soon.